This face tells a story most of the world tried to look away from. It's 1867, and this woman suffers from an advanced form of leprosy, a disease that didn't just scar the body, it shattered lives. In an era without cures, victims were often exiled, feared, and forgotten. Her expression, still, almost calm, hides a reality of pain and isolation. Back then, science was only beginning to understand that illness wasn't punishment, but biology. Photos like this were taken not to humiliate, but to educate, to push medicine forward, one haunting image at a time. When you look into this moment frozen in sepia, you're forced to ask, how far have we really come in showing compassion to those the world once cast aside? At first, it looks like an old wooden box under an open sky. But look closer, this was a death sentence. In 1913 Mongolia, this woman was sealed inside, condemned to die by starvation, a punishment designed to erase hope slowly. No quick end, just days of agony beneath a silent horizon. This wasn't chaos. It was law, a system where isolation was execution and the desert became a prison. Her face through that opening, it's not just fear, it's defiance, a final look at freedom slipping away. Historians debate her crime, but the image asks a bigger question: what kind of justice feeds on suffering? Now ask yourself, when you see this photo, do you see punishment or cruelty disguised as order? The war was over, but mercy didn't return with peace. This is France, 1944. A woman accused of collaborating with German forces is paraded through the streets, her head forcibly shaved, a mark of shame for the world to see. Crowds gathered, shouting, pointing, some celebrating as if victory needed one more victim. For many, this was justice. For others, humiliation disguised as morality. She was labeled a traitor, yet history leaves us with more questions than answers. Was she truly guilty? Or just caught in survival's cruel bargain? This photograph forces us to confront the complexity of war's aftermath. When hatred lingers beyond the battlefield, does punishment bring closure, or does it keep the wounds forever open? At first, you might wonder what happened to his face. This photograph, taken in 1908, shows a man living with a severe abscess that pushed his eye downward, a reminder of how fragile life was before modern medicine. There were no antibiotics, no advanced surgeries, just pain and uncertainty. Conditions like this weren't rare, they were part of everyday reality. Doctors documented these cases to understand, to teach, to fight against ignorance. For the patient, every day was survival. Long before the miracles we now take for granted. When you look into his eyes, you're not just seeing an illness. You're witnessing resilience in its purest form. So ask yourself, if you lived in his time, with no cure and no hope, how would you face tomorrow? Look closely at these innocent faces. Eisenhower, Hitler, Hirohito, Stalin, Mussolini, Churchill, Roosevelt, de Gaulle. Children with no idea of the storms they'd unleash or stop. In these portraits, they're just kids, curious, fragile, full of possibilities. But history had other plans. Decades later, these same faces would stand at the heart of the most devastating conflict the world has ever known, each shaping nations, destinies, and millions of lives. This image forces a haunting question. How does a child with dreams become a symbol of power, resistance, or destruction? Were they born for it? Or did time and circumstance turn them into the leaders history will never forget? New York City, July 28, 1945. A thick fog covers Manhattan as a U.S. Army B-25 bomber loses its bearings. Seconds later, impact. The plane crashes into the Empire State Building between the 78th and 80th floors, shaking what was then the tallest building in the world. Fires erupted instantly, debris rained down on Fifth Avenue, and panic swept the streets. 14 lives were lost, yet the skyscraper stood firm. a testament to its engineering and the resilience of a city already marked by war. Looking at this aftermath, one question lingers. How fragile is the line between routine and disaster, when a single mistake can change the skyline and history forever? Imagine trusting your eyesight to a flickering flame. This photo from 1920 shows an eye exam performed by candlelight, a time when electricity was scarce and medical tools were basic. There were no modern machines, no bright lamps, just a doctor, a patient, and a flame fighting the darkness. Back then, diagnosing eye problems required patience, precision, and trust. One wrong move could change a life forever. Today, we have lasers, digital scans, and sterile rooms. But a century ago, this was the cutting edge of care. So when you see this image, ask yourself, would you let someone examine your eyes by candlelight, knowing your vision was on the line? Berlin, 1945. The Third Reich has fallen, and the symbols of fear now stand in ruins. On this balcony, once the stage for Hitler's speeches, Allied soldiers laugh, salute, and mock the tyrant who promised a 1,000-year empire that barely lasted 12. Look closely at their smiles. They're not just celebrating victory. They're reclaiming space once used for oppression, turning arrogance into irony. Behind them, the Reich Chancellery lies shattered, like the illusion of invincibility it once projected. This photograph freezes a powerful truth. No empire, no dictator, no ideology stands forever. Power is temporary. So when you see this image, ask yourself, what will history do with the voices of today? 3 girls, 3 lives, and one photograph that speaks volumes about a culture in transition. Taken in early 1900s China, this image captures a barefoot servant on the left, a young Christian with natural feet on the right, and at the center, a girl whose tiny shoes reveal the painful tradition of foot binding. For centuries, bound feet were a symbol of beauty and status, yet they came at a cost: lifelong disability and unimaginable pain. By this time, Western influence and social reform were challenging the practice, but change was slow, and old customs clung to survival. Look at their faces, innocence framed by a society deciding who they were allowed to become. This photo asks a haunting question. How much of our identity is truly our choice, and how much is written by the world we're born into? You're looking at the future, or at least, what people thought the future would be in 1897. This line of vehicles belonged to the Bercy Electric Cab Company in London, one of the world's first fleets of electric taxis. Yes, electric. Over a century ago, each cab could run about 30 miles on a single charge, reaching speeds of 12 miles per hour. At the time, they were quiet, clean, and revolutionary, so much so that people called them hummingbirds. But the dream didn't last. Heavy batteries, long charging times, and high costs drove the company out of business by 1899. Still, looking at this image, you can't help but wonder, if electric cars were possible in the 19th century, why did it take us over 100 years to bring them back? What you're seeing isn't a prop, it's the world's largest camera, displayed in 1932 at the Capitol Industrial Exposition. Standing beside it is Miss K. Campion, dwarfed by a Kodak creation that symbolized the peak of photographic ambition at the time. This giant camera wasn't just for show. It could produce negatives big enough for massive prints, a marvel of precision engineering in an era obsessed with scale. Imagine loading film sheets the size of a window, or the weight of the lens alone. Back then, bigger meant better, an age when industries competed to astonish the public with size and innovation. Looking at this photo, you can't help but wonder, in a world where today's cameras fit in our pockets, what will photography look like in another 100 years? Classrooms without walls. This photo from 1957 shows children in the Netherlands attending an open-air school, an idea born from fear and hope. After tuberculosis ravaged Europe, Doctors believed fresh air and sunlight could prevent disease, so lessons moved outside. Imagine learning math with the wind in your hair and birdsong replacing the school bell. No screens, no fluorescent lights, just nature as the classroom. For many, this was more than education. It was survival, a fight for health in an uncertain time. Looking at this image today, it makes you wonder, were they ahead of us, turning nature into therapy while we lock ourselves indoors? Meet John Rogan, one of the tallest men ever recorded. Standing at 8 feet 9 inches and weighing just 175 pounds, he lived at the turn of the 20th century in Tennessee. His extraordinary height wasn't just genetics. It was caused by a rare condition called ankylosis, which fused his joints and left him unable to walk. Rogan used a custom-built cart to move, sketching and selling portraits to earn a living. Despite his physical challenges, he was known for his gentle personality and sharp sense of humor. But his fame brought little comfort. He lived in poverty and constant pain until his death in 1905. This photograph isn't just about size, it's about resilience. So ask yourself, what defines greatness? Physical stature, or the strength to create beauty in a life filled with struggle? Take a closer look at this moment. The year is 1920, and these women are breaking barriers, literally and figuratively. Just a few years earlier, competitive sports for women were almost unthinkable, confined by tradition and social norms that said strength belonged only to men. But here they are, sprinting, leaping, and defying expectations in heavy skirts and long sleeves under the summer sun. Every hurdle they clear isn't just part of a race. It's a symbol of progress, a silent declaration that women belong in every field, on every track. Looking at this photo today, one question stands out. How many hurdles did they have to overcome before they even reached the starting line? High in the mountains of Transylvania, shadows cling to ancient stone. This photo from 1929 shows Bran Castle, the fortress forever tied to the legend of Dracula. Though Bram Stoker never set foot here, the castle's lonely towers and Gothic silhouette matched the fear in his pages so perfectly that it became the face of a myth. In reality, Bran Castle guarded trade routes and witnessed centuries of war, whispers, and bloodlines. Yet fiction gave it immortality. Travelers still come, searching for the Count, or the chill of a story that refused to die. Looking at this image, you can almost feel the wind in those empty halls. So tell me, does this look like history, or the home of something darker? Welcome to a place where the ordinary dared not enter. Paris, late 1800s. This is Le Cabaret de l'Enfer, or the Cabaret of Hell, one of the most bizarre attractions of the Belle Époque. Guests didn't just drink here. They stepped into an underworld crafted from twisted sculptures, demons, and firelight, a stage for sin and spectacle. Every detail was designed to shock, servers dressed as devils, walls crawling with grotesque art, and eerie music echoing through the cavern. It wasn't about comfort, it was about sensation, about escaping the rules of a world bound by manners and morality. Looking at this photo today, one question burns bright. Were they chasing entertainment or flirting with something darker? This photograph holds more than faces. It holds a fight for equality. The year is 1944, and these women are the first African-American nurses to land in England during World War II. At a time when segregation was still law in the United States, they crossed an ocean to serve a country that didn't even see them as equals at home. They wore the same uniform, swore the same oath, and faced the same dangers, but carried an extra burden, proving they belonged in a world determined to shut them out. Their service saved lives, even as prejudice tried to break theirs. Look at their eyes, calm, determined, unshaken. This isn't just a photo of nurses. It's a portrait of courage, resilience, and a question that still echoes today. How many barriers must fall before equality truly stands? What you're looking at isn't just a boxing match. It's a statement of resilience. The year is 1910. On the left, Sam Lazowski, fighting with only one leg. On the right, Lon Young, with only one arm. Two men society might have dismissed, but here they are, facing each other in the ring, refusing to be defined by what they've lost. Back then, there were no special accommodations, no fanfare, just grit, determination, and the will to prove that strength isn't about perfection, but perseverance. Every punch thrown here carries more than force. It carries defiance against limitation. So, when you see this image, remember, the hardest fight isn't in the ring. It's the one we win inside ourselves. This isn't just a delivery. It's a glimpse into life in 1903 New Orleans. Before supermarkets, before refrigeration, fresh milk arrived in wooden carts like this, pulled by a single horse over cobblestone streets. Every morning, the milkman would fill metal cans, balancing speed with care under the southern sun. Look closer at the photo, the handwritten signs, the iron balconies, the rhythm of a city still finding its modern identity. These moments feel simple, but they were the backbone of daily life. No plastic bottles, no cold storage, just trust and routine. So next time you pour a glass of milk, ask yourself, would you trade convenience for the charm and challenge of a world that ran on horsepower?